Well, Zoom wasn't working, so I'm using Facebook Live today. And I'm not sure it's working, but it probably is because it says it's live. So hello, my name is Rebecca Eigen, and I'm an astrologer in Houston, Texas. And I specialize in relationships, and I'm the author of the Shadow Dance and the Astrological Workbook, 7th House Workbook. And today's discussion, Shadow Work discussion, is week 4. And today we're going to talk about dreams. So to begin with, dreams are psychic facts. They happen to all of us. And a lot of people will say, but I don't have dreams. Well, we all dream. I mean, every one of us dreams, and even animals dream. So you can actually see your cat when it's dreaming, when it's asleep near you. So we know that we all dream. We don't all remember our dreams. I encourage everyone to, if you're going to do dream work, to keep a journal by your bed. And so that you can, when you wake up with a dream, you can write down, even if it's just fragments that you remember, that you can write them down. Before you even get up and go into the bathroom or to brush your teeth or whatever, because you will forget. I mean, so many times I've said to myself, oh, I'll remember that, and then it's gone once I've gotten up and walked around or whatever. So definitely when you're working with a dream, when you're working with dreaming and you want to remember your dreams, definitely write it down as soon as possible before you even leave your bed. Some dreams are more important than other dreams. And so we will, but they're all important. I mean, every one of them is important because they're trying to tell us something. So the first thing is to honor a dream, to recognize it's sacred, that it is a sacred task to work with your dreams. You can paint them, you can sketch them, and again, you can write them in a journal. You can have a specific journal just for your dreams. And that way, at the end of the year, you look at that, you can look at that dream journal and see the sequence. And often there will be consecutive dreams that have similar symbols in it. And that would mean that the unconscious is trying to get something to you. So they have a function. And they're trying to tell us something that we don't know about ourselves. And they're compensatory. And that means they're going to compensate for our conscious attitude of what we really believe or what we think is happening in our world. A dream will compensate and give us the opposite attitude to show us where we're out of balance. So it has a function, and it's showing us attitudes that we have that we're not even aware of, that are going on in our unconscious that we need to know about. So they're showing us things that that might be hurting us, that are keeping us from being our true self, that are keeping us off balance. And so our dreams are very sacred, and they have our best interest at heart. It's important to work with them. And Robert Johnson did a book called Inner Work, and I want to show that book to you all. This book is fantastic. It's probably the best book on dreams, but I have about 4 more, and I will write them down at the bottom below this video to so that you all can order them if you're interested in writing and working with your dreams. Dreams are one of the ways that we experience God. That's how we experience what Jung called the self, or the imago Dei, or the God within. It's our connection to the transcendent. And the dream will give us a transcendent experience through bringing us information from what he called the unconscious. The unconscious and God are synonyms. It's like the unconscious in us, our personal unconscious, our self, that is our center, that is guiding us through life, will bring us these dreams in order to help us. So they show us symbolically what's going on with us in our outer world through the inner world, through these images. And I know that they're very hard to decipher sometimes. Sometimes they're clear as a bell. and they are not vague at all. And so often dreams will be bringing us information in symbolic form to keep us informed of what's going on. But it's a completely different language, so it takes work. It's a symbolic language, so it takes work to decipher them, and it's a good idea to write them down. As I said, paint them. I mean, I have a dream that I had many years ago, 10 years ago, that's painted, that is right here in this room, and one that I actually painted and framed in my bedroom because it was so important. So every once in a while we have what you would even call big dreams, and those big dreams have archetypal images in them, and they're really cool because when you have a very big dream, it can actually show you your future, something that is part of your process of individuation, part of your wholeness or reaching your wholeness. Both Jung and Freud felt that our dreams were valuable to us. And Freud even said that it was the royal road to God, to our unconscious. So having the attitude of that the dream is important to you and that you're going to work with it gives you the experience of connecting with that God image that is inside of you. And Jung said, the unconscious will work with you if you will work with it. So the unconscious will have the same attitude towards us that we give it. And as I can tell you, they are so valuable because you'll find out about people inside you that you do not know. And Jung would call these complexes. And we'll do complex theory another time, but basically a complex is something, the shadow is a complex. You know, while we're having, these are shadow work discussions, so the shadow is a part of our inner complexes. And a complex can suddenly come over you. It can usurp consciousness and take over the personality. So it has an autonomous factor. It has a life of its own. And an autonomous complex can do something in the outer world that you had no idea that you were going to do. It was not your intention. And so the unconscious will do something to show you something. So we have experiences of knowing that there's unconscious. I can't begin to tell you how valuable it was to me to figure out, or to not figure out, but to actually read in Memories, Dreams, Reflections by Carl Jung, that we have people inside us that we don't know. So that's the first step, is going into your own unconscious and recognizing that there are parts of us and that we are complex. We all have very complex personalities. There's a lot more to us than we're actually conscious of. So if a dream shows us somebody we don't like, that we have an aversion to, that makes our blood boil, if a dream shows us that kind of person, then that is a person inside of us. And people will say, but is that dream about her? Because that's something about that person? No, the dream maker is not going to give you dreams to point out faults in other people. The dream maker, or the dream within, is bringing you information for yourself to recognize the part of you that is like that other person. And I'll give you all an example. And this is something I have in my book. I have to take glasses off to read, and glasses to see further away are different. So here goes. A woman I will call Jennifer had a successful import-export business. She had several employees who were actively involved in sales for her company. She had hired one girl in particular, whom I will call Susan, whom after a while she could not stand the sight of. So this is an aversion. This isn't just a casual, well, I don't like this about that person. No, this is an aversion. This is like a person you absolutely cannot stand. She'd hired this one girl in particular, and this person, Jennifer described this employee as a person who exaggerated her importance and talked incessantly about who she knew and the mayor of the city and the richest people in the area, etc. She bragged constantly about her sales ability and she generally repulsed Jennifer. So this is a repulsive quality when it's a shadow element. It started to drive her nuts, so much so that although this girl was doing her job and doing it well, Jennifer wanted to fire her. She could not stand her anymore, and she told me. So I had come to visit her and stayed with her and her family for a couple of months as I was working on this book. And during that time that I was there visiting, I noticed Jennifer doing exactly what she was accusing Susan of doing. And she was acting the same way. And her teenage daughter, Amy, and I talked about it as it became very obvious to both of us. So together, we sat her down and we told her. Well, at first, she hotly denied it because she was furious that we would even think that she was like that. So when somebody accused, you can tell that the accusation is valid. When you accuse somebody of something or you point something out to somebody and they react violently, that means it's extremely valid because they're not able to access that. It's in their shadow. They're in denial about it. Things got worse before they got better. Jennifer resented me. She resented me for pointing it out because I was a guest in her home. She couldn't exactly get rid of me. Then one night during all of this, she had a dream. She dreamed that Susan, her employee, was walking toward her with a cigarette in her hand. Susan took the cigarette and swallowed it. Jennifer took this to mean that her dream was showing her that Susan was obnoxious. She said to me, "Look, she's even swallowing cigarettes," which would be a very literal interpretation. The unconscious gave her this dream to show her this figure was inside her, that she was blowing a lot of hot air and that she needed to swallow it. In other words, she needed to own it. It was a great example of a compensatory dream and how the unconscious will make a statement to correct the denial of our conscious mind. From studying Jung's theory of dreams, I knew that dream figures often represent your shadow, especially when they're a person that you cannot stand. So that is a really good example of how there are people inside us that we don't know. And so that is the function of dreams. That is one of the function of dreams, is to bring us information that we need to know about ourselves. So it's important that we avoid shifting the responsibility for our dreams away from ourselves. The dream is our dream. And that dream is concerned with pointing out to us our faults and improving us and helping us change. So our inner world, our dreams are giving us what's going on in our inner world where we're out of balance. Well, eventually, I'll tell you the story of how she finally got to it. It's in the book, but I'll tell you how she came to it. We were invited to dinner, and it was actually, believe it or not, the mayor of the city. She and her husband owned a very big hotel, so they were very famous in the city. Anyway, they knew a lot of people and, where we were. And we were invited to this party, and they invited me to come too. So we're sitting in a private room with about 6 or 8 people, and all of a sudden Jennifer started bragging about her accomplishments, bragging about the people that she knew. She was doing exactly the same thing she was accusing Susan of doing. Her daughter and I looked at each other and we smiled. And we just looked at her and she stopped. The next day she told us that her mother always made her feel she wasn't important. So that part of her that wanted to be important was still inside her as a complex. And that came out in this dream. And it was coming at her from other people in her environment so that she could see that that was a part of her, but it was an inner part of her that she was in denial about because she repressed it, because it hurt so much. But she started to make associations of the things that Susan would do, and she started to understand what the unconscious was telling her. And there's a healing, there was a healing that took place from that. So the dream is showing us someone we don't like, or if we have an aversion to that person, if they're showing us something in another person that we don't like, or the opposite. If they're showing us somebody we're madly in love with, that too is also a part of us. And that's a whole nother subject. And someday I'm going to talk about the anima and the animus more in more detail, but let's keep on with dreams. So it's easy. It's easy to shift the blame to others. But have you ever noticed that when something goes wrong, we're looking for someone to blame? It always has to be somebody else, not something we did. And we all have stuff we feel guilty about. We all have stuff that we've done that we feel ashamed of, that we don't want to remember, that we avoid being conscious of. And those things will go into our unconscious. They will go into our unconscious and they will be repressed because we're embarrassed. There's another statement by Jung in my book, and he says, remember, like when you do something out there in the environment and then you are ashamed of yourself and you go, I will never do that again. And you beat yourself up for about 2 or 3 weeks and then it's gone, right? It goes into the unconscious, but it doesn't mean it disappeared. And what he said was, it goes into that place where we all forget, what's really going on with us, because we don't want to access it at the moment. But it'll come back. It'll come back and be in our face because it's still there. And there's a reason that it's there. There's meaning and purpose to our dreams, just like there is meaning and purpose to doing shadow work, what I call shadow work. And there is no shame. There is no shame in looking at these parts. I actually think it takes courage to do so, to admit to oneself that there are parts of me that I don't know about, that I need to know about. And there are things inside me that are compensating when I'm out of balance. So there's an ongoing dialogue between our waking life and our dreaming life all the time. All the time. So if the dream, again, and I'm going to repeat it because it's important, if the dream is pointing out something that's wrong with another person, avoid shifting that blame and inflating your ego and saying, well, see, it's her. It's not about me, because it's not. It's about you. And that's the same with shadow work. When we run into something and it pushes all of our buttons, and we're pointing a finger at that person and we're really mad, it is about us. And so we really have to go home and do the inner work, write in a journal. Where has this happened to me before? Has it happened to me before? What does it mean? Am I out of balance with something inside in my inner world that is, the inner world is having to show it to me? But the outer world is the same as the inner world, much like an infinity symbol. An infinity symbol is showing that the inner and the outer are always in sync. They're always happening together. And what happens if we don't look at our shadow, if we don't pay attention to our dreams, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And it happens over and over and over. And then we begin to feel isolated from the world because we feel everybody's against us. Have you ever met somebody who believes that the whole world is against them? They don't recognize that these outer figures and these inner world figures that the dreams bring are both parts of yourself. And how you'll know about it is the energy involved. Whatever energy you give to it, if there's a lot of energy involved in something that is really pushing your buttons, I guarantee you it's about yourself. So the dream can show us our weaker, our softer, our meaner, or our kinder. It can be both positive and negative. So if we are the kind of person that is very short-tempered and we're mean to others and we're constantly challenging other people and picking on people, etc., then the dream will show us an inner person who is kinder, who is wiser, who is softer, in order to compensate, to show us that that person is also inside of us, and we need to bring that person out into our conscious world, into our conscious behavior. So the person in our inner world has a role to play. It has a role to play in bringing us to ourself. So our job, our unconscious, our God within, is constantly bringing us back to center. We don't want to be an extreme of this, and we don't want to be an extreme of that. I talked about that 2 weeks ago when I talked about paradox and synchronicity. If we are an extreme of anything, the opposite extreme is happening in our unconscious to the same degree. So we want to show ourselves where we can be whole, and wholeness is all about balance. And it's an ongoing process. This is all the time. This is not something that you're going to do this week, next month, this year. No, this is forever. This is something that you live by. It's your way of being in the world. Epistemology comes from the word pistos, which means to know. So epistemology is what we know and what we understand. But ontology is our way of being. It's our way of being in the world. So it's ontology is what we want to get to. We want to start recognizing that all of this information that we're learning is a way to be new. And for anything to be changed, for anything to come into our awareness and to live as part of our conscious life and be new to us, something has to die. Something has to die for something to be reborn. It's an ongoing death and rebirth experience, and that's where the healing takes place. That's where the dreams are healing us. The other thing is Robert Johnson talks about four ways to work with your dreams. And so I'll describe those. First, of course, we have to capture the dream. I mean, that's the very first part, of course. And we have to associate to the dream. We have to take every figure in the dream, every object, everything, the colors, the environment, write down all of the different symbols and things in the dream. And here's on page 55, he has the word blue in the center, and an association to that would be cool and detached. Our clothes could be blue. We could be sad. I've got the blues. We can be blue, like blown away. We can be my blue sweater. You know, it can be mine. True blue. So all of these different ways, this is how dreams work. It's a completely different language because it's all symbolic. So it's looking at the different parts of the dream, writing them down to associate with the dream is the first step. Now, the second step is to connect that dream to our inner reality. So if there's something in the dream, take a person that you don't like, in a negative form, it's probably your shadow. And if you come into somebody like a policeman or a woman who is overbearing, who's scolding you, or some kind of authority figure, that can be a negative father complex that you have with yourself, that you challenge inside yourself. So try to make the associations and then try to connect those images to your inner reality. The third part, of course, is interpreting the dream, and that's the hard part. But if you look at all the connections and all the associations and you start writing in your journal, the message can come to you gradually. Sometimes dreams take a long period of time to understand. You can have a dream and 15 years later, you're still working on it. You're still remembering it because it has that much energy about it. So the fourth thing is ritualizing the dream. And as I said, that's writing it, painting it, sketching it, keeping a dream journal, or taking something that the dream tells you to do and do it. So if the dream tells you to call someone, call them. If the dream tells you to go buy something, buy it. So ritualizing the dream is part of dream work. And now I want to talk a little bit more about big dreams because they can be a panoramic view of our overall development that's going to happen over time. And we know it's a big dream because there are archetypal symbols in it. We also know it's a big dream that it's part of our process of individuation because it has so much energy that we remember every detail. And the dream, we could tell the dream right now as if it happened yesterday. So I'm going to tell one of mine. That I considered to be a very big dream. I dreamed that I was at my parents' house and that we were inside and we looked out a window and only my mother, my father, and myself were in this dream. So we looked outside and there was flooding. Flooding always is indicative of the unconscious. So there was a huge flooding that was occurring. And we looked outside on the front lawn and it looked like a piece of wood, like from an old ship, had come up onto the lawn after the waters receded. So I told my mother and father, there might be a treasure in it. Let's go look. And they said, yes, let's go look. So we went outside and we were pulling the wood apart. We were pulling all the wood and they gave up and they said, there's nothing here. And they went inside. But I didn't give up. I kept pulling. And I pulled, and there inside a crevice in the wood was a box. And I opened the box, and it had blue jewels, like necklaces, and gold coins, like very, very old gold coins were in this box. And I took them inside, and I told my parents there was treasure in it. And they said, they were surprised. And I woke up. So I feel like that dream was telling me that I had inherited my mother and my father's energy. In astrology, you can actually see it, that it comes down the pike. You can actually see the symbols and the archetypes that are meaningful in your own life. They're going to be meaningful that were in their life. And you also inherit these. And you can also see that in your child's chart. So it is remarkable. But that dream was telling me that was going to be an ongoing process for me to understand the inner meaning and the treasure of going in to my own unconscious and bringing up the gold. And blue jewels and gold coins are symbolic of love, a loving heart to me. That's what that brought to me, that it was the buried treasure of the inner world, that the inner world has a treasure that most people don't associate with, that if they knew more about their inner world, they would be able to work with their inner world and their outer world at the same time. And it does bring you a huge sense of peace to do that. So share the dream. Share the dream with a friend. Share the dream with somebody who will take it seriously, who can give you feedback, who knows you, that you trust. That's another way of ritualizing the dream. And some people are more gifted in interpreting dreams than others because, again, it is difficult. It's a symbolic language, but when you start getting used to it, and there are several dream books and symbol books that you can buy that can help you to start, making associations And that's how you get in shape for it. Just like you get in shape for anything else, you have to take it seriously. You have to work at it. And that's why he calls the book Inner Work. It's work. And I call this shadow work because shadow work is work. It takes work to go inside yourself. It does take work to be honest with yourself. And part of it is getting our ego out of the way, because our ego always wants to point fingers and say it's their fault, it's your fault, it's because whatever happened. We do have to go inside and look at the inner world to see how it can help us. And get a pad next to your bed, because even fragments, even just fragments of your dreams, when you have a dream journal and you go back at the end of the year, those fragments are going to make more sense. And remember, again, what Jung said, if you take an attitude towards your unconscious that you want to know more about yourself, your unconscious will take that same attitude towards you. You have to honor it and value it. So it takes practice. And how do we get good at anything? Practice, practice, practice. So that's my talk for today. And I'm going to look on Facebook to see who's here. And there's actually people here. So let me see. Hello. I'll write something. Does anybody have a question? Does anybody have a question they want to ask? Or does anybody want to talk about a dream that they had? I know you can, it's hard to type all that, but you might be able to say a few words and I'll wait a few minutes, because I think there's a lag time. There is a lag time between what I see and what is happening there. So I'll take a drink of water because I'm thirsty. And if y'all don't have any questions, so far I haven't seen any questions. So we've been on the phone. We've been on here 32 minutes. So I'm going to say goodbye and thank you for joining me. Please come back again next Friday. And next Friday we'll talk about something different. I'll announce it during the week. And I appreciate y'all watching. And again, to learn more about me and my work with astrology and what I do, you can go to shadowdance.com. And there's a video on there on shadow work that I highly encourage everyone to watch. It was actually done in 2009, but it was live in front of an audience. So it's one of the best ones that I have. I have a lot of them, but I don't have one that I felt was short enough and good enough that was kind of concise that I could share with you all. So it's on my homepage. And again, thank you for joining me.